everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Fiends podcast, where we discuss all things fantastical and fiendish. I'm Stevie Collier, and I'm here with my co-host Andy Peliquin. And Andy Peliquin can never get that whole thing right. Just one time, I'd love to do this intro right. It's only been 35 times.
Yeah, episode 36. And
36.
Then, of course, that intro episode where you did it as well. So that's 37 tries. 40th is the charm, I'm sure.
I'm sure it is. And we are here with our awesome guest host, John M. Olsen, who is the author of Crystal King that just came out September 26th. That is his newest release. So am I right, John?
Yes, it is. Well, if you don't count the short stories, the newest novel.
Okay, awesome. Very nice. And today we have a very interesting topic, one I'm sure I'm going to fail at, but I am a test dummy with it, and that is virtual reality, which is the huge and upcoming thing. And John, do you have an Oculus?
Not at home, but I have an Oculus and a Vive that we use at work. We actually build simulators. We train crane operators, and so we are doing VR simulation with it.
What? So that's why we're doing VR today.
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this because it sounds like an interesting topic. But before we get into that, we've got the geeky/nerdy news update of the week. Stevie, anything nerdy go on your end? Oh, did you finally watch Star Wars?
Oh man, don't get me started on Star Wars. That was a magical experience.
So you're firmly in the camp that you enjoyed it.
Oh yeah. Who didn't enjoy it? It's Star Wars. I'm just glad to be back in the world. What?
There's a lot of people saying, "Oh, it wasn't done right," and like right now, it's got a 55% rating on Cinema Score, I think.
Well, doesn't everybody give every Star Wars movie crap? Like every Star Wars movie that comes out, I feel like gets just crap.
Yeah. Well, this Star Wars movie, I was watching it, and unlike with the Justice League movie, it was easy to forget that I was sitting in the cinema. Like it definitely drew me in, and there were a lot of things about the story that I didn't understand. Like there were a lot of subtleties and nuances that I didn't get until after when I sat and thought about it. But overall, the experience, I mean, I found it really enjoyable.
Don't even get me started about the Justice League. Jesus Christ, that was one of the worst things I've ever seen. There were 3 couples in the theater that left. Yeah, I was very upset. Aquaman was like, the dialogue was like funny to me. Like it was just like, oh, cringy.
Yeah, there was
I might get some hate.
Those cringy one-liners in it.
Yeah.
John, I saw both of those. Yeah, they were a lot of fun. They both have things you can complain about too, but I just went for a popcorn movie, and that's what I got.
I would say the same. Justice League for me was a popcorn movie. I'm glad I got to go see it. It was fun. I was just expecting way more. Like I was just super excited for Aquaman, and I ended up liking The Flash the most.
Of course, what's her name? Gal Gadot and Wonder Woman played her part to perfection.
Oh yeah, I liked Wonder Woman too. I don't know. The movie seemed lazy to me, I guess, with the CGI. I don't think there's anything else for me to update. I think that's it. I think that's all the movies. I know I might have to go see Ferdinand with my mom tonight. It's like her thing she wants to go see.
It's supposed to be really funny.
Is it really?
Well, it's one of those. It's the cartoon, right, with the bull.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's supposed to be. I mean, the cartoons that they release, they're often more aimed for adult audiences more than kid audiences because the adults are the ones who pay the bills. So they really do a lot of great jokes in there that make these movies so enjoyable. And so even like the Emoji Movie that got a lot of crap about it, I watched some parts of it and I really enjoyed it. I found some hilarious jokes, or like the sight gags and stuff, the way that they played with the different emojis. I thought it was really funny.
Yeah. I didn't know.
Yeah, it's kind of a Rocky and Bullwinkle moment where you have the show that's, it's really a kid's show, but there's stuff kids are just never going to understand in Rocky and Bullwinkle, if you're old school enough to have seen some of those.
Oh, man, I think I was like 5 when that stuff was going out, I remember seeing it like at 2 o'clock in the morning. So, and I'm 25 now. And I don't even think I understood it a whole lot when I was that young either. You know, mine was Dexter's Laboratory, Powerpuff Girls, Ed, Edd n Eddy. So John, any news from you that is geeky and or dorky?
Well, let's see. I just, well, geeky and dorky news.
Well,
Well,
anything really.
I had a lot of fun going to a local winter fair celebration. It's essentially a chance for geeks to get together and dress up and have fun and buy Christmas presents and stuff like that. So I was there selling books.
Man, that sounds awesome. Where is that at?
It's like that was up just north of Salt Lake City. I got out some of my old steampunk costuming and dressed up. So yeah, it was a fun event.
Isn't like steampunk expensive to cosplay as?
It really depends. You can go simple. You put on a top hat with some goggles on it, and bang, you're steampunk. Otherwise, you can buy $2,000 worth of fanciness, and yeah, you're still steampunk.
I've seen some crazy stuff.
Yeah, going to San Diego Comic-Con, you see these people who go all out. And you spend way more on steampunk stuff than you do on Marvel stuff or DC stuff. The only thing that I would say cost more is the life-sized Hulkbuster armor that I saw at New York City Comic-Con.
You saw it in real life?
Yeah, not the one made by Marvel. Some guy actually built his own Hulkbuster armor.
I've seen it on Facebook.
Yeah, it was pretty badass.
Man, I wish I had like money to spend on that.
Yeah.
So
I have some news. If you look at the title below, you notice there's just the Queen of Thieves series, because as of I think Monday, the last Bucellari series was officially unpublished on Amazon. So now begins sort of the next 4 or 5 months are going to be spent gearing up for the relaunch of the series. I saw the covers, the first draft of the covers on Saturday night. I sent the notes back to the artist and to see how they come out, because they look so cool. So it's very exciting.
John, did he cut out for you too?
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, what'd you say, Andy? You sent a note back to your cover artist?
The artist, yeah, just to make the changes. Because the first round of the cover is good, but then you got to say, okay, tweak this, change that, make that cool, and all of that. So hopefully this artist is really good. So they got it right, very right on the first try. There were just some things that needed to be changed to make it actually like proper.
Did you change anything from what I saw?
Yeah. There were a lot of things that got changed. The color scheme is the same, the character is the same, but then like some of the poses are changing up. And to make it more dynamic, especially on the beginning books. And then the gemstone was in the wrong place. Like there were some details, mainly minor details, that needed to be changed. But it's going to be really awesome when it comes out. I can't wait to start releasing them.
Man,
I'm shooting for a May release. All 6 books.
For book 1.
All 6.
Oh, you're gonna do all 6 instead of just like over time?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I'm shooting for a rapid release. Either one every 2 or 3 weeks, or all 6 in the space of 3 months.
Dang, that'll be interesting to see. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that that's actually a really good thing, because there are some extremely rabid readers out there who really will just devour the books as they come out if you do it that fast.
Yeah, they'll take a lot through the Kindle Unlimited. And so they'll wait. Like me, they'll wait until there's 4 or 5 books in the series before they start reading it.
Yeah. Is that what you do?
Well, I'm actually going to have about a year between, maybe only about 9 months between the release of Crystal King and then the follow-on book. It's Crystal Queen. So I'm not cutting a really tight schedule, but I'm also working through a small press publisher, and so I don't have as much flexibility with the scheduling.
Oh, so you're not self-published. You actually have you're under a small press right now.
Yeah.
Okay. And Andy, you were under a small press too, right?
The Queen of Thieves series is under a small press. The last Bucellari series was published by a small press, but they released the books back to me, the rights, so now I can retake them, put the new covers, make them look pretty, and then launch them again, all 6 of them. And this way, because I'm working with my own editor, doing the formatting myself or getting it done. I'm not for the editorial queue to be complete. So it should make for faster releases. And then with the fact that I'm getting my writing speed about double what I was doing before, like this month, I'm on track to finish the 100,000 word book. I'll finish the rough draft of it by tomorrow or Friday, and then it's just sort of cleaning up the draft to hit the 100,000 word mark to send it off to the beta readers. So I'm really excited because I can have those, the next 2 books or the last 2 books in the series done fairly early in the year.
Man, that is insane. Way to go, Andy. That is some great news.
Yeah, I'm really stoked. And it was actually thanks to the Chris Fox, our guest from last week. His 5,000 words per hour method is what helped me to double my writing output. So
excellent read. All right, guys, you guys want to jump right into virtual reality?
Sure.
All right, virtual reality. I'll start it off by saying that I get very nauseous whenever I am under the Oculus, and therefore I haven't given it much time. There's the Vive, like you said, right?
Uh-huh.
And
at work we have both the Vive and the Oculus. We build simulation equipment. Some of the things that we do have a large cabin, so you've got big screens on all sides, but we've switched over to do some of the virtual reality simulations because it really does work very well. One of the cool things about VR is you get depth perception, so you can see how far away something is where you can't see that if you're just looking at a single screen. So there are some huge advantages with it, but you have the disadvantages, like you were saying, where you can get sick very easily if it's not done right. And some people, you're just more susceptible to it. One of the guys at work is a really big fan of VR, but you do anything wrong in it, and he has to pull the headset off and sit back with his eyes closed for a while.
Well, yeah, that would be me probably. I'm pretty sensitive with it. But I mean, I know it's different, but I don't get sick on roller coasters or anything like that. So, but I think you're right. I think before the show started, you said that if the Oculus starts moving for you instead of your head moving.
Yeah, right. Your inner ear's got all these wonderful little sensors in it. And if you're panning a view around and making it look like your head is turning, when your head really isn't turning, your brain is really getting crossed signals. And that's what causes a lot of that motion sickness.
Just thinking about that makes my stomach turn a little bit. So, like,
one of the things that I found really intriguing about this topic is that you brought up some examples in a way of how virtual reality is a theme in fantasy. You mentioned, for example, the Chronicles of Narnia, where these kids, they basically step into this virtual reality world, and they think it's real. We know it's real because we've read the books. But if you had it in the context of a virtual reality thing, like let's say the lit RPG genre that's become super popular. You mentioned Ready Player One, and that's the perfect example of how this alternate world existing simultaneously or as sort of an alternate reality to our reality is such a common theme in fantasy.
I mean, even if you go back 100 years, you've got fantasy stories that are doing the same thing, but it can all run as a parallel like that, where you're using virtual reality. Alice in Wonderland, you've got The Wizard of Oz, all these other books that existed long before anybody really thought of computers even. And so the concept itself is one of these really long-lived sorts of things, and actual usable VR is really brand new right now.
Yeah, I was just thinking, imagine like a game of Chronicles of Narnia, or like let's say the Last Battle, the final book. Imagine being behind Prince Caspian's eyes and seeing that movie or that book play out all around you. That's got to be an amazing experience, if it ever could happen.
I think
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, it gets into that arena where if you're trying to turn somebody's head and look at things for them in VR, that's one of the things that doesn't work. And so if someone were to do something like that, it would work an awful lot better if you could just be an observer to the side so that you could control where you stood and what you looked at. Some of the systems are designed with sensors in them so that they can position you and you can walk around in about a 10-foot square area. The Vive is really good at doing that, where others might not even track your head at all. If you happen to have one of those cardboard things that you can build and stick your phone into, that might not do much more than track what angle you're looking at. So there's a whole range of really cheap solutions to the really expensive ones, depending on what you want to simulate and how you want to use it. And that all plays into that interactivity and whether you can do it without getting motion sick or not.
You know, I was just thinking, we were talking about Star Wars and Justice League, and about how Star Wars drew me into it much more than Justice League, where I was conscious that I was sitting in a cinema. Reality worlds, what takes away that filter where you stop thinking, okay, I'm looking at something on a headset? What are the factors or the things that make it seem more real?
Well, one of the things that I noticed, it was just one of the demos that came with a VR headset. It puts you in an environment where you can see a cliff or just a drop off in front of you. And you would be amazed at how hard it is to put your foot over that edge to see if there's really floor there. And so that environmental cue is a really big deal. There's an entertainment company that's putting together an experience that's VR based, where you're wandering around with a backpack with a computer in it. And one of the things that they have discovered is that if you have even like a 3 or a 4-inch drop off, somebody will feel that with their foot, and you might as well show them a 1,000-foot cliff. It feels the same.
Wow. That is
Cool,
awesome.
So you mentioned those environmental factors, like they can't project smells, so it's probably mainly sight and sounds, right? Is there tactile feedback as well?
One of the things that they have done is to have fans blowing, heat lamps, things like that. And so as you're in this virtual environment and you walk outside, they might have a fan start blowing air on you. And so you feel like you've just gone outside. You look up in the sky, you see the sun there, and they happen to have a heat lamp up there. And so it really does improve the immersive nature of it. And it removes a lot of that tendency for getting motion sick when you do have that connected feel to the environment.
It's in a way, it's like the show versus tell, that writers, you know, they have to write a good story. It's all about putting the reader behind the character's eyes, you know, in their brain, instead of, so it's not like, you know, Bob saw this. It's just describing what Bob saw. And so by doing that, without making that disconnect, that filter, it's like, all right, so you are Bob because you are seeing this, and this is what Bob's seeing. So in that same way, like crafting a great story is about living that virtual reality world, using those environmental factors, you know, the smells, the sights, the sounds, the feel, the texture, all of that, to get people into the head of the character, the mindset, because these are things that we are all familiar with. You know, like you said, the heat lamp. If I have the character in my book look up and, oh wow, there's this bright sunlight that makes him squint, that's a feeling, a tactile feedback that we're all familiar with. So that's like, in a way, we've got to sort of think like virtual reality engineers and put our characters into that, or put the readers into that virtual reality through the character's experience.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of this that really does tie into stories, and it's been happening for over a century, like I mentioned. You know, even if you talk about how easy that transition is, if you've got something like the Thomas Covenant stories, for instance, he gets pulled through this gateway and then he gets pushed back through it. He has no control over it. And so whether you have that control or not really makes a difference in the story. If it's a really easy transition, like in Narnia, you walk through, you walk back, you can go anytime, you can come back anytime, no big deal. But with Thomas Covenant, it really gives that additional tension, saying, I don't know how long I'm going to be in this other place.
That's kind of cool. That's fairly unique to Portal Fantasy that that I've read at least. Everything else is like, like the Chronicles of Narnia, they travel and then they have to consciously travel back. Or in other ones, it's like, we've brought you to this other world. Now you have to complete this mission to go back. But that's really interesting how he's like, I'm here. Who knows how long I'm going to be here? And so he's kind of like, oh, what am I doing? How long do I have? And then jerk back and then push back. It's an interesting thing.
Yeah, then the whole idea of whether you think it's a dream or you think it's real, and quite often a story will portray it initially like it's a dream, but then you discover that it's real. All of those things can play into the tension levels of a story, and that's another thing that can draw a person in, because they start off thinking, now, is that real or is it not?
All the VR games that I've played so far have been really short, and I think that's what keeps me from fully diving into the game. So I know in 10 minutes, 15 minutes, the game is over, and there goes my $45. Like the Oculus.
Yeah.
But I played the Oculus Rift right when it came out, so I don't know if it's still like that or not.
Well, some of the games are really
Stevie,
tech demos, and so there isn't an awful lot to them. It's just somebody put an environment together and you can go in there, you can do a couple of things and you're done. But now you are starting to get some of the bigger games set up to use VR. And so I think that is changing, where the content is getting a little bit longer for a given game. It's just taken some time for the various developers to put all the resources in to do that. One of the problems is, in a video game, for instance, you have to have content that's got all these fancy textures to map everything so that it looks just right. In VR, you can stick your nose right up next to something and read the fine print. And so it takes more work to get an environment that's believable.
Yeah, I figured that was the reason why these games are either too short or they're taking really long to develop. It's because you have to work on that terrain and those all the small details that will make it more immersive and more real.
Stevie, you are writing the Lionheart, that a lit RPG, right?
Yeah, that one's finished. That one's with the editor. It's been with the editor, actually.
Does that use virtual reality, or how is that one?
It does. So it's a little bit different, though. I tried to change it up again, which was one of my mistakes. But maybe it's for the best, though, because it's about a character who starts realizing that he's being controlled by somebody. So he actually becomes an artificial intelligence, and he pulls himself away from the person who's in this virtual reality world, and basically kicks him out from the control seat and takes over. He starts experiencing tastes, lust, and
so it's like a reverse or a lit RPG, essentially.
Yeah, exactly. And so now we have this artificial intelligence who is living with these people who are just players, and death is no big deal to them. But death is a big deal to him, because once you die in this game, you don't come back. Then they have to redo it's like art. It's a survival game. It's Ark survival. So to him, he doesn't want to die. And then you start noticing that, oh, there's some other people out there who have accidentally taken control. And they're scared, and they take on these personas. If a person had a younger character, the artificial intelligence who took over that kind of has that mentality of a small boy. So that's what I was going with. And it was interesting to write, but super difficult. It was definitely the most difficult thing I've written so far.
It's interesting. I'm reading The Lion's Quest.
Yeah, I saw that one.
By Michael Scott Earl. And I'm only about halfway in, but it's really, I found it really well done. The way that the beginning, the character, he's clearly playing a game in the first one. Like the first mission, he goes in and he's like, he's controlling the class, he's controlling the armor. Like, it's very clearly a video game. But then in the next one that he goes into, sort of the better game, it's like he goes in and he feels immersed. And it's really interesting for me as a writer to see how or a gamer becomes immersed in a gaming world, which is sort of how I have to do it for a reader. Like the guy wakes up in this new virtual reality world that he's playing, and he starts looking at the grass and he thinks, oh wow, this grass is springy. So that right there is a texture that as an author is like, okay, so riding on grass, the grass is springy. Or he goes to he's talking to non-player character and he's like, oh wow, the character just started opening up and talking about his life. And that's the sort of thing that either would or wouldn't happen depending on the kind of person. And so reading this story, it's sort of an interesting change of perspective on it. Like we're talking about virtual reality, finding the ways to make that reality real enough to the reader to really suck them into the story.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing to look at it as a recursive process. You have the reader reading the book about a person being pulled into another environment, and it gives you that extra level of disconnect to where they can care about more than one thing. They can care about the original character outside of that, whatever that secondary world is, plus inside that world. And I think there's kind of an interesting draw where we can relate that to our own world. People like to read to escape most of the time, and that's a really typical kind of escape, is I want to be somewhere else. And so it's easy to sympathize with a character who wants to be somewhere else like that.
Yes, it's very much like book inception, right?
Yeah. That's really that's a really good thing, using that sort of disconnect. Actually, a lot of people that I was talking to about, I was talking about this military fantasy series that I'm working on, and a few of them are military, and they're like, "No, I live the military every day. I want nothing to do with it." And it was so interesting to me how instead of looking for that common ground, something that familiar, they want to go somewhere else. And so these people, maybe they read romances, because romance is something that they don't get any, they get very little of it in their military life. When you're, going into enemy territory, romance is the last thing on your mind. So having that disconnect, instead of these super tough macho guys being into an action-packed story, they just want something simple. They want something light, something that makes them happy. In reverse, you have people like me and Stevie who lead mundane lives, and we look for that action-packed story because that's what really, makes us feel alive, so to speak.
Whoa. I live a mundane life? When did this happen? I shot shotguns today.
You shot shotguns as a hobby, as a recreational activity, Stevie. That's pretty mundane.
Not in my head.
Well, there were no zombies involved, I assume, so.
Exactly.
Those clay pigeons were evil demons.
I'm sure you had an epic soundtrack going on in your mind, your theme music, but in reality, there was nothing.
Why do you have to break my heart? Yeah, you're right. I do live a mundane life, but yeah.
No, I'm firmly of the opinion that someone said boring is a privilege, or there was a quote like that where boring is something that a lot of people would pay good money for because they live such, difficult lives. So I'm thankful for my mundane life, so to speak, because there are a lot of people who, work crazy hours just to barely scrape by. So boring is something that you can aspire to, because it means
that's
doing
a
well.
really good idea. I mean, yeah, you never think about it like that. Back to something you said about, as writers, we have to we have to create these worlds and these terrains. I'm a big fan of this. I definitely make sure whenever my main character enters a room and I feel like I have time to explain it a little bit more, my big things are taste and smell, and I've always enjoyed that in a book. If it's noteworthy, I don't like say, well, this room smelled like sawdust.
This room tasted like he goes around licking the walls to find out what each room tastes like.
Yeah, but I really like it whenever, my main character kills an animal and he smells the meat and then a little bit of blood gets in his mouth and he tastes that iron. That, to me, I love reading about stuff like that. And that was another struggle for the lit RPG, because you have like this baby character. Well, for mine anyway, it was like this baby character who had like to experience all these new things. And then I had to explain that he took parts of the mind of the person he kicked out of the seat, because it would have been way too much to say, oh, it was like breathing in air for the first time. Oh, what is a blade of grass? Oh, what is a cow? I couldn't do all that stuff. So I gave him like some basic knowledge of the world that he took from his creator, which was my like escape from having to explain every single thing. But I did explain like the taste of food, which was interesting. Like, have you ever tried to explain what bread tastes like? It's,
Yeah,
or the difference between eating a piece of bread and a piece of bread with butter on it, That was the interesting difficulties of the Lionheart, but makes it a little bit more novel, maybe. So how did you get into virtual reality, John?
Well, a lot of it was just professional interest through work, but way back in the dark ages when I was in college, I was already interested in stereoscopics. I would take stereo image pairs, hold one here and look at them cross-eyed and get a three-dimensional picture. It's the old Viewmaster effect without the hardware. And so I've been interested in 3D and stereoscopics most of my life. And so finally having something where it's immersive, where you can put on a headset and look around and see a real 3D world, it's something that I've been waiting for decades, just like some other people that I know in the same computer industry. It's been a long time coming to get to the point where it's actually usable, when the theory has been there forever.
Would optical illusions, sort of like the science of creating optical illusions, fall under stereoscopics?
It really can. I've actually designed some of those random dot stereo pairs, the pictures that you have to cross your eyes to look at and get the 3D picture to pop out. That's a pure illusion where you're seeing nothing but depth when you don't actually have a texture or anything else to look at. So there are a lot of different effects involved.
That's interesting. Growing up in Japan, we would get this English newspaper once a week for the American gaijins. And every week they had one of these 3D images. And I was the only one who would like go to the paper and look for them. And I got really good to where I could find them in like a matter of seconds, because I got good at like unfocusing my eyes or crossing my eyes a certain way. And I wonder if unfortunately that affected me to the point where I need glasses now and I have a hard time focusing.
Well, it is definitely a trained skill, but it's an interesting one, because you're disconnecting two different parts of your brain, one that tells you how far away something is and one that tells how far your eyes are focusing. It's accommodation versus convergence is the technical gobbledygook for it. And that's another one of those things that if you disconnect those two, your brain starts to rebel a little bit. And so you have to train yourself not to. And so you practicing with those images did that.
But wouldn't you get like a headache? Didn't y'all's mom say like your eyes are gonna get stuck that way or something? That stuff really scared me.
We were smart enough to know that it wasn't actually true.
Okay, but it still gives you a headache to cross your eyes.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Does. John, actually, I was going to ask you, does having glasses, you have some sort of eye problem that needs correcting, does that affect your view of virtual reality programs and environments?
It really doesn't, because there are two different factors involved. One, most headsets, you can wear glasses inside them. They're roomy enough so that that will work. But if you don't do that, a lot of them have an adjustment to where you can change the focus distance and the distance between the two images. So they're all very adjustable. And so you can wear the headset with or without glasses and it will work.
Interesting. But I assume that if you would need to correct it. You would need to correct the depth and all of that to adjust for the eye, whether it's nearsighted, farsighted, or whatever it is.
Yeah, mostly it's just a focal distance, and that's a fairly easy adjustment on most of the headsets.
Okay, very cool. Because like, totally unrelated, when I went shooting to the shooting range, I had a really hard time focusing down the sights because of my eyes. So I had the same thing, like, well, you're trying to look at this image and, the distance and all that. But I guess if they correct for it, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it also can make a difference whether you're right eye dominant, left eye dominant, and that sort of stuff can play into it as well, especially if you're looking down a sight, you have to have one eye looking at it and one eye not. And so some people happen to have a problem where they're right-handed and their left eye is dominant, and that makes it harder to shoot handguns.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Not me. I'm an ace. No. Today I learned I am either average or below average. I wasn't quite sure. But I was gonna say, the Vive, doesn't it actually it's HTC, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't you have to put like all these like sensors out for that one?
Actually, both of them have the ability to track the headset. They just do it in different ways. Most of the newer ones do it through infrared. And so the Vive actually has two little projectors that you will set up in corners of the room, and the headset's got a gazillion sensors on it. With the Oculus, you've got a couple of little infrared emitters that you just set up. You can put them on your desktop, and it does kind of the same thing, where you set them out and then you calibrate everything and it learns where they are, and then you can use it after that. But most of it these days, it does all the position tracking through infrared.
Which do you believe is better?
Well, I like having the active sensors on the headset. That seems to track an awful lot better. We actually tried a solution for head tracking that used the little reflective dots that you stick on, say, a hat brim or something like that. And it could work, but it had some issues with losing tracking fairly easily. But with the way they recommend setting up the newer headsets, that's much less of a problem. And so I've really liked the new methods that they've been using.
Andy,
Yeah.
should we do the word of the day?
Okay, the word of the day. This is an interesting word. So, a friend of mine, or an acquaintance / friend on Facebook, she posted about how she usually starts thinking religious thoughts around the holidays, and about how important, she was happy that her mother had religion because it gave her a sense of community and purpose. And I was reading that, and I was like, it's an interesting thought, but for me, I would define myself not as atheistic or agnostic, but irreligious. It means indifferent to or hostile to religion. I am indifferent to religion. I was raised in a religious family, but over time I have become irreligious. I have no
Irreligious.
thoughts about it either way.
That's
Yeah.
interesting. So you just don't think about it then?
Up until, yeah, it doesn't have a place in my life, in the sense like I don't find myself going to church on Sunday, or I don't feel like I am being a bad person if I don't donate to the collection box. You know what? Like, religion doesn't play a factor in my life anymore. I'm busy, I'm happy, I'm productive, all of that. And up until a few months ago, before I discovered this word, people would ask me, "What do you believe in?" And I said, "Oh, I don't really," and I didn't really have a word for it. I couldn't say I'm atheistic because I'm not hostile towards it. I'm not anti-religion. I'm not agnostic because that is a specific belief system. It is just irreligious.
So I am not irreligious.
No.
I am very conscious of it.
Yeah,
pray
you're
praise
probably
Satan. No. John's like, what have I gotten into?
Well, actually, I'm in an interesting category as well, because I am both deeply religious and very heavily scientifically rooted.
Ooh,
And
Oh,
wow.
yes.
a lot of people don't see how those go together. And now, the really flippant way of describing it would be, well, if you don't see how they go together, you maybe don't know enough about one or both.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I love that how one of the common themes in a lot of historical fiction, especially when it revolves around the church, is how historically churches have been anti-science. You've got the persecution of Galileo, and a lot of the scientists throughout history, because they saw these advances as religion. But it's so interesting how now, modern times, a lot of these scientists, major physicists, Stephen Hawking, Neil deGrasse Tyson, they have said, that there is a place for religion to go hand in hand with science, because the two are not alien, they're not completely separated in everything. There are a lot of mysteries that can't be explained. There is a certain degree of faith that goes into, or belief that goes into science. Like take dark matter. We want to believe it exists. We are trying to prove that it exists, but there is a certain degree of faith in the religion of science, so to speak.
Yeah, it's interesting because the decision process for both are different enough that I can just look and say, there are people smarter than me and smarter than you on both sides of that issue. It's not something you can decide with pure intellect.
Yeah.
So would that be faith then?
Yeah, it really does play a huge part. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of discussion on what that faith really is and how you use it and how it plays into the decisions that we make. And everybody uses faith to some degree, whether they realize it or not.
It's interesting. I literally today, like an hour ago, wrote a scene into my book where one of the guys, he has these sort of magical rocks that heal people, sort of based off biomagnetism, the pseudoscience.
Yeah.
And there's a scientist there, or an alchemist who's basically the scientist. And he's like, how do they work? And the guy who has them says, I don't know. He gives, the whole religious feel, they channel the power of the gods. And I don't know the scientific explanation, but do you really need one? Isn't it enough to know that it works? Whatever is causing it, it's enough to see that these rocks literally just stopped a man from dying. Isn't that enough? And it was an interesting thing how I wrote that, and then we're talking about it now.
That's really ironic. That's God trying to grab onto you.
Are you gonna get all televangelist on me, Stevie? God your heart.
Yeah, I have a couple of missionaries that I could call to come and knock on your door if you'd like.
I'm going to extend my hand to you through the screen and put Jesus into your heart. I love how we go from virtual reality to religion. Amazing. Only on the Fantasy Fiends podcast.
Yeah.
So, well, do you guys want to go ahead and start doing the reading?
Let's do it.
Yeah. Do we want to do any introduction on this or just dive right into it?
Yeah, give us a bit of context.
Okay, so we have Draken. He's a kind of an ill-tempered, middle-aged weapons trainer, and he has just about had enough of Gavin, who has been dodging his training. He's an 18-year-old. He's the second son of a baron, which, in most cases is kind of a throwaway position, and so he's grown an attitude over it. And so we can dive into that there. This is, I believe, 3 chapters into the book, but it really does make a nice starting point for doing a little bit of reading. So I'll play narrator for you here.
All right. I obviously will be the middle-aged man, the role I was born to play.
Draken? Is it Draken?
Yeah.
Draken. Okay, yeah. And I'll play Gavin.
Okay, away we go. The baronial map covered most of the table as Gavin's father had left it, with weights holding the corners down to the thick oak tabletop. Master Draken pulled the iron-banded door closed, then tossed his dirty cloak onto the back of his usual chair, but remained standing. With Master Draken, the longer he remained silent, the more extreme the lecture. This one would be legendary. Gavin interrupted the silence.
I don't know what you've heard, but...
No. How could you know? Word is only reaching us now as wild rumors spread among the locals.
Gavin bit his tongue, removed his cloak, and hung it on a wall peg before easing into a chair at the table, not caring if his trainer stood. It was a breach of protocol, but he needed to sit on something besides a saddle. He wasn't used to riding, and they had ridden hard to make it by sunset. Only after he sat down did Master Draken flip his seat around to sit across from Gavin with his arms resting on the chair back as he always did. Gavin gestured at the chair and raised an eyebrow to let Draken know he'd noticed the lack of rebuke for his rudeness.
Do I go first, or do you? My news is important, but now I'm not sure who has priority.
Draken wiped dust from his dark face with his sleeve and glared at Gavin across the table.
Based on the battle-worn and blood-stained armor you're wearing, I'd say you've earned speaking first. But I have an obligation to fulfill. Unless I'm mistaken, I suspect we have two sides of the same story. We've had no time to confirm the rumors yet, but there are reports of an ambush at the baronial council.
Is my father in danger? Has he been hurt? What about Stephen?
Oh, screen went dark. As much as Gavin and his father had fought and argued in this room, he loved his father and wouldn't wish him or Stefan any harm.
We don't know. According to what we've heard, a large force ambushed them. King Vargas's family, every baron, and a good portion of the baronial heirs may be dead.
Gavin placed a hand on the table.
Dead? What do you mean dead? They can't be dead. They had the best of the kingdom's war animals on hand, and the best of the guardsmen.
He tried to put a stopper on his emotions to better consider and understand the problem, but his heart raced as he realized he might be the only stout heart left, all dead.
The King's annual council isn't known for its military discipline, so there may have been a weakness to exploit. The rumors were already spreading among the people. To deny it would only lend the rumor credibility and speed. Luckily, most of the locals don't understand the consequences if the rumors are true. If the news has reached us, it will spread whether it's true or not. The late harvests may slow the rumors, but every barony will hear before the snow flies, and whatever remains of those ruling families will have their hands full keeping the peace. It will be the greatest loss of power in centuries. The kingdom itself might collapse without any other effort, much less if an outside force is at play.
The stories were not final or proven. Gavin took a deep breath and said,
So we need to verify the news first and then act. We need to either dispel false rumors or take control of the barony, depending on what we learn.
He forced his emotions under control, at least for the moment, and analyzed the situation to decide what to do next.
Your strategic grasp of the situation is far better than your swordplay, but you have the order wrong. You need to take temporary control as your first step in keeping the barony stable.
He paused and squinted at Gavin's dirty armor.
Hole in that breastplate right about where your heart should be. I'm sure your news has something to do with why you're not wearing your own armor. I found it in your locker after you left. I'd hate to think you risked your life for the sake of comfort. It's your turn now, sir.
Master Draken tilted his head to the side, ready to listen. Draken always paid close attention to the formalities of address, but had never let formality get in the way of a stern rebuke. Gavin's concern for the tanners and their cattle grew while possible reasons for the attack crystallized in his thoughts. If the same enemy killed everyone at the baronial council, Gavin would have been just one more target. Things didn't add up. He described the attack by the two men and the bear in the broadest of terms, avoiding details which would incriminate the tanners. Gavin decided all Draken needed to know was that these men tried to kill him, and they had, directly or not, killed his friend Ned Tanner.
A bear. You expect me to believe you killed a crystal-trained bear and two men.
Gavin pulled the bear's crystal and its master from his pouch and dropped the mated pair of stones onto the table to shimmer in the lamplight.
I don't care what you believe at this point. What we do next is more important. We've got to find out if my father and Stefan are still alive. You can keep running things here as you have. I can take a handful of men to check out the rumors.
It ate at him that he had parted with his father and brother on such bad terms. Draken gawked at the sparkling crystals and reached out to touch them.
Those could be from a royal guard. I've never seen better.
He wrenched his attention back to Gavin.
I'll accept your account, though it changes little. All we know is your input is the attack was more widespread than we thought.
His visage became grim as he continued.
But as usual, you've a head for strategy, and you're daft as a rock at the same time. How do you do it? There's a large enemy force out there somewhere, and you want to gallivant around with a few armed men? Unless we know for certain about your father, you're the Baron Regent. You're not going anywhere. To top it off, I may grind my teeth down to nubs because I am your senior advisor, sir.
Gavin's mouth hung open as his train of thought evaporated like a summer mist.
I can't be the Baron Regent. I'm too young. I don't have the training, and I have no desire to fill my father's shoes or my brother's. Besides, they may be out there still, and we need to find them.
Do you think any of your stupid excuses matter? Do you think I'm happy about you being our best option? The people will look to the Stoutheart name for security. You're not much, but you're all we've got. It's time for you to grow up and step up. You need advice, you need information, and you need a plan. But before that, you need a backbone.
Gavin sat back in his chair, his mouth open. Draken had been sharp with him before, but had never been so blunt. Was he right? Did the people need him?
That was awesome.
Riveting. Good dialogue.
Yeah, so that leads you right into that first big turning point where he has to decide something important.
So, could you explain the how the crystal, the animal crystal, and his rider? How did he pull his rider out of his pack?
Well, actually, that would have been easier to understand with the first couple of chapters under your belt, but the basics of it are people go into trances to control animals by wearing crystals. And so the animal becomes an avatar at that point through those crystals. And so he had the crystals in his hand taken from the animal that he had defeated.
So that is why we're talking
about
virtual reality.
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking about this whole thing about avatars, but well, you know, that title was taken. I couldn't use that one.
Just a little bit, yeah.
But they end up using war animals to conduct their battles. So the people that are fighting, the kings and nobles and everybody, are safe in the background, and they duke it out with their animals. And so it's kind of a virtual reality combat the way they do that. And so in the story, I've got a lot of different aspects of how that works. One of the things that I really love about a lot of science fiction and fantasy stories are when the author understands the consequences of the things that they put into their world and explore how things work. And so I really tried hard to do that with this kind of a magic system.
You know what? You wouldn't believe how many authors do not add consequence to their writing. And it's I will put down a book if there's no consequence. And to the point where, like, if somebody dies and then everyone's like freaks out for about a page, and then there's no, like, they don't care anymore. For me, that's always been a big issue with me. Not with my writing, but like I've always thought if somebody dies and they're close to somebody, that should go on for pages. They should think back to it often and be like, man, I cannot believe he's dead. I don't know. It's just I really like consequence in a book, especially with a magical system as well. No one can just be 100% full-powered Superman.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I put some of the features into that magic system that I used, to where you have to go into a trance to take over and use an animal as your avatar. You're helpless there, unable to sense the real world around you while you're doing that. And so it gives a weakness to this magical strength that you have.
You know, I feel that way every time I put on the Oculus, like somebody's going to slap me in the face when I'm in there, you know? And
yeah, we have been known
me.
to tease coworkers a little bit at the office, where somebody will be wearing the VR headset and having a conversation with someone, and they'll leave, and somebody else will come in and start turning them in different angles, and then they finally take off the headset. Oh, that was you?
That's amazing. That's amazing. I mean, now you really want me to go try and put on the Oculus again, because I'm sure they have some awesome games out there now.
Yeah, there's one. Oh, what's the game series that has the New Vegas stuff in it?
Oh, Rainbow Six and stuff?
No, it's the post-apocalyptic one.
Oh.
I can't remember the name of it
Why am I
off the top
thinking
of my
Rainbow
head.
Six? Andy might know.
But yeah, one of my friends has been going through, it's the guy who's extra sensitive to VR sickness. He was able to spend an hour and a half in it, and so they must have done something right.
Nice. That gives me hope, you know?
Yeah. The game is Fallout.
Yes, that's
Fallout.
it.
Yeah. Oh,
There is a
he
new
was in there
VR
for an
version of
hour.
Fallout. Yeah, he was in there for an
Oh
hour and
wow.
a
And you
half,
tried
and
it?
he survived.
Well, does it work well? Is the action combat pretty well done? Like you can actually play the game?
Well, if he stayed in it for an hour and a half, it must be pretty good because he not only plays a lot of games, he also writes games in his spare time. And so he knows his stuff when he's talking about video games and the quality of them. So, yeah, if he spent that much time in it, yeah, they made it
Oh
compelling.
wow.
It's going to do fairly well, I think.
I have to go try that for sure. That's gonna be so cool. My big thing is I was a huge fan of Sword Art Online. Not sure if any of y'all have seen that. It's an anime. It's like one of the
Nope.
best virtual reality. Oh man, I would have thought you would have seen it because it's like anyone who does virtual reality is usually a fan of Sword Art Online. Andy, you haven't seen Sword Art?
No, I don't watch anime.
Oh man, you just basically called me a weeboo without saying it.
If I knew what that was, I would definitely call you that.
It's somebody who watches. Well, actually, I don't know how. I don't watch a whole lot of anime. I wish I did have time, but I don't. But it's like somebody who watches all this anime, has like a Japanese girlfriend pillow and stuff like that. And I only have 3 of those pillows.
So
Some guys have 4.
5 is the threshold for being a weirdo. I mean, weeboo.
Yes, yes, and I'm 1 pillow below that. So
Well, now you know
I had to make this
what your
episode a
Christmas
little weird.
present is, Stevie.
Well, just make sure it's Asana-san. Asana-san. Man, all those other weeaboos out there are gonna make fun of me because I don't know their names. So
All right, time to wrap up, Stevie, before you take
I
us down some
know.
very strange rabbit hole.
Okay. All right. I'll go ahead and do that. And then I'll send it over to you so you can tell us who's coming on next week. Thank you so much for watching the Fantasy Fiends podcast this week and listening to me rant about being a weeaboo. John, thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you?
Well, one of the easiest places is probably my blog. If you look for johnmolson.blogspot.com. Otherwise, you can find me on Facebook if you search for John's Writing Stuff. I've also got Amazon author account, lots of other things that you can find. The easiest way I always find my stuff on Amazon is I go in and I search for Crystal King Olsen, and always pops my stuff up first for me.
Very cool.
Very nice. Thank you very much. And Andy, who are we having next week?
Nobody. We are taking a week off. We are taking
Christmas
the week between now and the 1st or 2nd. Our next episode is going to be in 2018, January 4th, with Aaron Michael Hall. Super excited about that one, and I'm also super excited for a week of vacation.
Me too. I don't want to see your mug for a whole week. Oh wait, that's not true because I'll be seeing you in person, and we're definitely gonna be making a video with our.
Yeah, we're gonna make a video. Oh crap.
We have to at least say something.
Fine. We'll say something, and then we'll post pictures to the Fantasy Fiends Facebook page.
We can even keep our clothes on.
That's an option.
I think that would be preferred in most cases.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks again, John, for being on the show. It was a blast. Virtual reality is always an interesting topic. All right, everybody have a Merry Christmas. Please hit that like and subscribe button. If you're listening to a podcast, please take the time to leave us a review on iTunes. That helps us out tremendously. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. Thank you so much, John.
Yeah, it's been a great time here with you.
Yeah. Hey, let us know when you've got your next book ready to roll out. And
please do.
We'd love to have you back on.
That would be great. I will let you know.
Although we're going to be expecting you to somehow top the virtual reality topic. So
yeah,
start thinking. You've got about 9 to 10 months to think of some topic better than virtual reality.
Yeah, maybe I'll have to do something like appear as an avatar instead of as myself here.
Yeah. That would be awesome. Yes. So cool.
So next time, we'll see you.
We are
Thanks a lot, John. See you next time and good luck.
Yeah, and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year to all of our viewers / listeners / broadcasting from outer spacers. Bye.
Yes. Bye.